It was Christmas Eve when I landed. My name's Eric, I'm 32, and I hadn't been home in 2 years. I used to love the holidays, the snow, the food, the chaos of too many people stuffed into one house. But after my parents divorced and my siblings got, well, greedy, things changed. I moved across the country to chase a better life and eventually built something solid for myself. A stable tech job, a calm apartment, a circle of actual friends who didn't treat me like a walking wallet. But still, a part of me missed home, missed my grandpa mostly. So this year, after months of ignored group chats and guilt-tripping texts from my sister, I decided to fly back. I didn't tell anyone I was coming, figured I'd surprise them. Joke's on me. When the Uber dropped me off at the old house, the one I helped renovate with my bare hands a decade ago, it was pitch black. Not a single light on, no car in the driveway, not even the smell of food wafting through the door. I knocked twice, then let myself in with the key I'd kept since college. The silence hit me first. Then, from the kitchen, I heard the sound of plastic crinkling. I turned the corner, and there he was, Grandpa Joe, sitting at the table with a flimsy sandwich on a paper plate, wearing 2 sweaters and squinting at a crossword. I froze. "Eric," he said, perking up, and for a second, I swear he looked younger. "Grandpa? What's going on?" He gave a tired shrug. "They left this morning, said they were going to Disney for the week, left a note." The note was taped to the fridge. In my sister's curly handwriting it read, "Use the holiday fund you sent to book the trip. Couldn't take Grandpa. You know how he gets. You're the responsible one, right? Watch him for the week. T-checks." I stared at it for a full minute before laughing. Not a happy laugh, the dry kind you do when something inside you snaps. I didn't even remember sending them money for a holiday fund. Turns out they'd labeled one of my birthday transfers as that. Typical. I looked at Grandpa, who was quietly folding his napkin. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "They left you alone?" I asked, barely holding it together. "They said I complained too much," he said, almost apologetically, "and that Disney doesn't have wheelchair ramps. I told them I didn't mind, but your mother just smiled and said I'd ruin the magic." I felt something in me shift. Not anger, not at first. Just cold clarity. I'd spent years bending over backwards for this family. Paid off my sister's student loans when she accidentally got kicked out of school. Helped my brother get his real estate license, only for him to brag about flipping a condo I co-signed. Covered my mom's utilities during her spiritual phase when she quit her job to become a life coach. And this? This was the thanks I got? I made Grandpa some proper dinner, leftover ham and potatoes from the freezer, and we sat in the living room watching reruns of Matlock. He was quiet, thoughtful, but right before bed he said something I didn't expect. He leaned over, turned down the TV, and whispered, "They'll regret this." Then he smiled, slow, knowing. That night, I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling in my childhood room. Every little insult and favor replaying in my mind like a bad highlight reel. The time my mom made a Facebook post about how hard it is being a single parent right after I'd covered her rent. The time my sister laughed at me for living alone and called me emotionally constipated because I didn't want to Venmo her for a bachelorette trip I wasn't invited to. The time my brother borrowed my car and returned it with a cracked windshield and a shrug. I never asked for recognition, just basic decency. 3 days passed like molasses. I stayed with Grandpa, cooked his meals, made sure he had his meds. We talked more than we had in years. He told me stories about my dad when he was young, about my grandma and the garden she loved, about the old neighborhood before it got overrun with trendy cafes and overpriced yoga studios. It was the kind of quiet, steady connection I hadn't felt in years. And it made me angrier, not at Grandpa, but at everyone else. That they'd abandoned him like this. That they thought I'd just accept it. That they counted on me being the reliable one, the pushover. Then, right around noon on the 3rd day, the doorbell rang. I opened it, and there they were. My sister, red in the face. My mom, looking winded. My brother, arms crossed like a bouncer. And behind them, 2 tired kids with Mickey Mouse ears drooping over their foreheads. "You're home," my mom said, half relieved, half accusatory. "No greeting?" I asked, deadpan. I was expecting at least a welcome hug. My sister scoffed. "Can we come in?" Why? They exchanged glances. My brother muttered something about Grandpa said something weird. I raised an eyebrow. Where is he? My mom asked, trying to look past me. Is he okay? Very, I said. Watching a documentary on sea turtles. Why? My sister stepped forward. He texted me. Said, Eric's teaching me how to make them pay. What does that mean? I didn't move from the doorway, just leaned against the frame with my arms folded. And that same quiet, deliberate calm I'd watched Grandpa wear like armor for years. That depends, I said. What do you think it means? My mom looked rattled. She always hated when I spoke in riddles. She liked things simple, especially when it meant she got her way without having to ask twice. My sister rolled her eyes and tried to push past me, but I didn't budge. Eric, seriously? Don't be dramatic. We had plans. We didn't think you were even coming. Yeah, my brother chimed in, not even looking me in the eye. You ghosted the family for 2 years, and now you're suddenly our moral compass? I couldn't help but smirk. I didn't ghost anyone. I stopped replying after the 3rd time you texted me you up at 2 a.m. asking for money for a crypto scam. He turned red. I finally stepped aside just enough to let the kids shuffle past. They looked exhausted, one clutching a stuffed Pluto, the other chewing on a candy cane that had long since melted into a sticky mess. My mom followed after them like she owned the place. Look, she said, dropping her designer purse onto the counter. I know this looks bad, but it wasn't that serious. We were only gone for a few days. He was fine. No, I replied calmly. He wasn't. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't have to. I watched her flinch anyway. My sister hovered by the table, finally noticing the meals in the fridge, the clean dishes in the sink, the blanket folded neatly on the couch where Grandpa had fallen asleep a few times. I could see the pieces starting to click that I hadn't just filled in for a few days. I'd stepped up. Eric, my sister said, voice forced sweet. Let's not make this into a thing. We've all had a long week. Did you even check in on him once? Silence. I turned to my mom. Did you tell his doctor you were leaving town? Did you leave any emergency contacts? Did you even give him his medication before you left? She blinked. We figured you'd handle it. You didn't know I was coming. Another silence. Grandpa appeared in the hallway just then, gripping his cane like a staff. He was wearing a cardigan I'd bought him last year that he swore he didn't like, but had been wearing every day since I arrived. Well, he said, raising an eyebrow. Look who found their way back from the land of talking mice. My sister actually had the gall to smile. Hi, Grandpa. He didn't smile back, just looked at me and gave a single, solemn nod. That was the signal. I walked over to the kitchen drawer, pulled out a small stack of envelopes, and placed them on the counter one by one, each labeled in my handwriting. Mom's name, my sister's, my brother's, all neatly written, all containing the same thing. Revocation forms. What's this? My brother said, grabbing his. Power of attorney, I said. Bank account access, health proxy, emergency contact forms. Everything you convinced Grandpa to sign 2 years ago while I was working 70-hour weeks to get promoted. My mom's face fell. That was for his benefit. Number Grandpa interrupted, stepping forward. That was for your benefit, so you could siphon off my retirement from Monopetus and crypto and streaming services I never watched. My sister turned pale. But, you said. I was scared, Grandpa said flatly. I didn't know who to trust. Your mom said Eric wouldn't come around again, that he didn't care. But he came, and he saw what you did. All of you. I opened my own folder and held it up. He's transferring everything over, effective immediately. I'm the sole executor of his accounts, his medical care, and his estate. That includes this house. Dead silence. My brother looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. You're kicking us out. I looked him in the eye. You don't live here. My mom stepped forward, her voice trembling between rage and fear. Eric, please. You don't understand how much we've done. Oh, I understand perfectly. You abandoned him. You used my money to go to Disney and left a disabled man alone with a sandwich and no meds. Then you showed up 3 days later like on The Unreasonable One. Number, you don't get to flip the script anymore. I pointed to the fridge where the notes still hung. That's the last thing I'll ever let you write in this house. Then I walked over, pulled it off, and crumpled it in my hand. My sister's voice cracked. "So that's it. You're just cutting us off." "Number," Grandpa said, voice firmer than I'd heard it in years. "I am." They looked stunned. I opened the front door. "Merry Christmas." My mom hesitated like she wanted to say something, but nothing came. Not an apology. Not even an excuse. Just silence. She turned and walked out. My brother followed, dragging his suitcase behind him like it was filled with bricks. My sister lingered, still waiting for someone, anyone, to change their mind. We didn't. She left. When the door clicked shut behind them, Grandpa let out a long, slow breath and sat down. I joined him. He looked over at me with tired eyes but a smile that felt 20 years younger. "You know," he said softly, "they're going to try something." "I'm counting on it," I replied, because I hadn't told them everything. Not yet. The next morning was quiet, too quiet almost. Grandpa was already up, reading the paper with his usual cup of black coffee and dry toast, humming something I vaguely recognized from my childhood. I was still half expecting another knock at the door. Maybe my mom holding a tray of muffins as some pitiful olive branch, but it never came. Not that I was waiting for one. I had other things to do. After breakfast, I logged into my laptop and pulled up a spreadsheet I'd started the night before. It wasn't anything fancy, just a simple list of every transaction I'd made over the last 5 years that involved my family. Every transfer, every temporary loan, every emergency payment that somehow became a permanent one. Every utility I'd covered without ever getting a thank you. I'd color-coded it too, blue for my sister, green for my brother, red for Mom. Red took up almost half the sheet. Grandpa shuffled in behind me, glanced at the screen, and raised an eyebrow. "You always this organized with your vengeance?" I smiled. "Only when it's personal." He chuckled and sipped his coffee. "Don't forget the time your sister used my Medicare card to buy that electric foot spa." "Already on the list," I said, "and I filed a report with the agency. Fraud on a federal program? That's not something you just walk away from." His chuckle turned into a weasel laugh. "You're more like your grandmother than you think. That woman could slice a man in half with a well-worded letter." I couldn't help but grin. But under the humor there was a pit in my stomach. Not guilt exactly, something sharper, something heavier. This wasn't some petty revenge fantasy anymore. This was justice. Or maybe it was just the first time I'd drawn a line in the sand and meant it. By noon, the call started. Unknown number, then another. Then my mom's contact popped up with Mom's second line. She had to be using my aunt's phone. I let it ring. A text came in. "We need to talk. This is out of hand. Please be reasonable." Followed by another from my sister. "Why are you doing this? It was just a few days. You're being cruel." Then another. "If this is about the money, I told you I'd pay you back. I just need a little time." I muted the thread. Grandpa looked up from his crossword. "They still think this is about the Disney trip?" "Yep." He shook his head. "They never understood you, kid. Never gave you credit for anything unless it benefited them. You didn't change. They just ran out of excuses." I stared at the blinking notification bubble on my screen. 20 unread messages now, maybe more. I thought about my brother's half-finished real estate scheme, the one he kept trying to rope me into by dangling investment opportunities like bait. He'd pulled a second mortgage on a duplex under Grandpa's name, back when he still had partial access to his bank account. Said it was temporary, said he'd pay it off after a big flip. But I'd found the paperwork 2 nights ago, and there was nothing temporary about it. I thought about the streaming accounts my sister had tied to Grandpa's email, billing him monthly for 5 different platforms he didn't even know how to use. Thought about the doctor's appointments she claimed she was scheduling for him. That turned out to be hair appointments and massages, all billed through his retirement account. And I thought about my mom, about the sweet little notes she'd write on birthday cards and then immediately follow with, "Hey, could you help out with this thing?" Like love was a transaction. The countless ways she'd guilt me into silence when I raised concerns. The times she told me I was cold and distant when I asked why Grandpa's prescriptions were always late. They were parasites, and they'd finally hit a host that fought back. I stood up and grabbed the folder I'd been compiling. Inside were the printed statements, screenshots, legal docs, and emails. Everything in order, everything backed up, I wasn't just cleaning up after them anymore. I was building a case. "Where are you going?" Grandpa asked as I headed toward the door. "Lawyer's office," I said. He gave a satisfied nod. "Tell Sheila," I said. "Hi, she's still got that weird dog, still wears that little vest like it's a tuxedo." He grinned. "That mutt's got more class than your mother ever did." I laughed, but my stomach was coiled tight, because this was bigger than a ruined holiday or a selfish family trip. This was a legacy they'd tried to hijack, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. As I stepped out into the snow, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a new number. I opened the text. We saw the notice. "Call us back now. This has gone too far." Attached was a screenshot of the foreclosure alert for the duplex. They knew. Good. I put the phone in my pocket and started walking. Not rushing, just steady, focused, calm, like Grandpa with his crossword, one box at a time. Let them panic. They hadn't seen anything yet. It took less than a week for everything to collapse. When I handed Sheila, Grandpa's longtime attorney and former neighbor, the folder, she read through it in silence, eyebrows rising higher with each turn of the page. When she got to the section detailing the second mortgage my brother had pulled using Grandpa's name, she closed the file slowly and looked up at me. "You sure you want to go nuclear?" she asked, folding her hands. "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't," I said. She nodded, then smiled faintly. "They don't know who they messed with." Within 48 hours, we filed everything, formally revoking financial and medical power of attorney from my mother and siblings, freezing Grandpa's compromised accounts, alerting the retirement fund and the bank of suspected misuse, and starting the legal process to reverse the unauthorized mortgage. Because of Grandpa's age and the documented evidence of coercion, the bank was surprisingly cooperative. Sheila had handled elder abuse cases before, and once she contacted the fraud unit, things moved quickly. By the end of the week, every account my family thought they had control over was frozen or closed. Their recurring charges, from gym memberships to Amazon Prime accounts to an outrageously expensive wine subscription, were all declined, one by one. I didn't even have to lift a finger for that part. The dominoes fell on their own. They must have assumed I'd bluff, that I'd eventually cave again and sweep everything under the rug like I always had. They were wrong. The day after the bank revoked the second mortgage, I received a knock on the door. It was my brother. He didn't even try to hide his panic. "Eric, you need to undo whatever you did. I'm in trouble." I leaned on the doorframe, just like I had the last time. "That's not my problem." "It is," he snapped. "They're calling in the loan. I can't make those payments. I was planning to flip it. You forged Grandpa's signature to take out a loan he didn't understand. That's not an investment. That's a felony." He paled. "No one's pressing charges, right?" I didn't answer. Let him squirm. He stepped forward, dropping the bravado. "Okay, look, I messed up, but you can't ruin my life over this." "I'm not ruining your life," I said quietly. "I'm just making sure you stop ruining his." I shut the door in his face. That afternoon, my sister tried her luck. She didn't come to the door, she called. I ignored the first three, but on the fourth try I picked up. She launched into it without even a greeting. "Eric, I'm going to lose my car. That's not my fault. They locked my accounts. I couldn't even pay my rent this month. What am I supposed to do? Maybe get a job that doesn't involve stealing from a 78-year-old? She went quiet for a beat. Then, with venom in her voice, "You always think you're better than us." "No," I said. "I just stopped pretending we were the same." She started to cry, or fake it. Hard to tell anymore. "This isn't what family does. You're tearing us apart." "You did that," I said flatly. "I'm just making sure you don't get to do it again." I hung up. The next day, Sheila called with news. "Your mother's trying to contest the changes," she said. Filed a request to regain control of his medical proxy and access to his retirement fund. Of course she did. I wasn't even angry at that point, just tired. So I asked Sheila if we could speed up the next step, moving Grandpa's assets into a trust with me as sole trustee. That way, not even a contested will could touch it. Sheila moved fast, and by the time my mother's legal request made it through the system, everything had already been transferred. Her filing was denied. She showed up in person this time. I opened the door to see her standing on the porch in a fitted coat, makeup done, holding a tin of cookies like we were characters in some sitcom. Her smile was brittle. "I brought your favorite," she said. I stared at her for a moment. "You brought store-bought sugar cookies in a tin I gave you last Christmas." Her smile faded. "Can we talk?" I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly. This vendetta of yours, it's going to tear the family apart." I didn't respond. "I know we weren't perfect, but we're your family, Eric. You left your father alone with a sandwich and no medication so you could meet Goofy." She winced like I'd slapped her. "That's not fair." What's not fair is how you used me for years. What's not fair is how you made me the backup plan, the safety net, the silent wallet. And when I asked for the bare minimum, for respect, for decency, you gave me silence." Her expression hardened. "He was fine." "No, he wasn't," I said, stepping closer. "He could have fallen. He could have had a stroke. And you wouldn't have even known, because you were too busy taking selfies in front of Cinderella's castle." She tried to speak, but I cut her off. "You didn't just forget about him. You forgot who raised you." I turned and went back inside. That was the last time she came to the house. In the months that followed, things settled. Grandpa was more himself than I'd seen in years. We got him into a better physical therapy program, and I renovated the downstairs bathroom to be fully accessible. We even started a routine. Thursday nights were diner movie nights where we'd order food and watch old detective shows. He said it made him feel young again. I transferred my job to a fully remote position and set up a home office in the basement. It was quiet, peaceful, and honest work. No drama, no fake apologies, no manipulation. Just me, Grandpa, and a house that finally felt like a home again. As for my family? My brother lost the duplex. Turns out he'd been using it as collateral for a second investment he never told anyone about. He tried to drag me into court over interfering with his business. The judge took one look at the evidence and dismissed it in 15 minutes. Last I heard, he moved back in with a friend and was trying to start a podcast about resilience. My sister's landlord evicted her after 3 months of missed payments. She texted me once to ask for help, a long, guilt-tripping monologue about how we used to be close and "you're the only one who can fix this." I never responded. My mom? She disappeared for a while. No calls, no posts. Then, one day, a mutual acquaintance forwarded me a blog she'd started, Healing After Narcissistic Children. Apparently, I was the villain now, a cold, bitter son who let success rot his heart. I read it. Once. Then blocked her and moved on. And Grandpa? He's doing well. He's even teaching me how to play cribbage, though he cheats and claims it's part of the charm. One night, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, he turned to me and said, "You saved me. You know." I shook my head. You were always worth saving. I just finally stopped waiting for them to act like you were." He patted my hand, then leaned back with a sigh. "They'll regret it," he said again. "They already do," I replied, and this time we both smiled. Because the war was over, and we'd finally won.